Hey, it's Professor Grabowski, and in this video I will discuss how to revise and polish your news story so it can be as good as possible. After you write your story, you're not done yet. You absolutely need to proofread it carefully. No one gets everything perfect on their first draft. You should expect to do several revisions before submitting your actual story to me. But if you're so bored with your story that you're not willing to read over your story again and again, then why would anyone else want to read it once? Moreover, this is a college course that meets the university's writing requirement, so sloppy work is not acceptable. If you submit stories with lots of mistakes, that indicates to me that you don't care that much about your story. And if you don't care about your story, then I assume you won't care if I give you a low grade. Keep in mind that I'm not the only one who will potentially be seeing this story. Our goal in this class is to get your story published, so conceivably thousands of people could be reading your story. So take pride in your work, because your writing reflects on you. So follow these 6 steps to ensure that your story has been adequately proofread. Step number 1, spell check your story. It's simple and it's easy, but many young journalists forget to do it. I don't mean to insult your intelligence. I know that the vast majority of you will do this without even having to be told to do it. But every semester, there is always at least a couple students who don't run a spell check, even though it literally takes only 2 minutes to do. I can tell that they haven't spell checked their story because as soon as I open it up in Microsoft Word to review, I see a bunch of words underlined in red, indicating that they're misspelled. So make sure you run a spell check. Keep in mind, though, that the spell check is not going to catch all spelling mistakes. For example, if you misspelled a homonym or used the wrong homonym or misspelled someone's name, that won't show up in a spell check. So you need to also do a manual spell check in addition to running the software that's on Microsoft Word and Google Documents. Step number 2, print out your story. After you've edited your story on your computer, print it out and look over it again. Many times you'll catch mistakes on your hard copy that you miss on a computer screen. Having a hard copy is also good protection against a computer crash or file corruption. In addition, you should also read your printed story aloud. Reading the words in your story out loud so you can hear yourself speaking will help you catch so many mistakes. Our brains are trained to compensate for mistakes when we're reading something silently, so we tend not to notice them. But if you actually read something out loud, it will make you realize that a sentence is missing a word, that a word is repeated twice, or that a sentence doesn't make sense. So always read your writing assignments out loud, not only for this class, but for everything you write. You will catch so many mistakes that way. Okay, moving along, step number 3, underline all names and places. And then here's what you're going to do. For names, check the spellings again. Remember, many people's names have non-traditional spellings. For example, is it Mark with a K or Mark with a C? Is it Cindy with a Y or an I? Is it Greg with 2 G's at the end or 1 G at the end? Check to make sure you included full names and qualifiers for each source on the first reference. If it's a place, is it spelled correctly? Are you sure the address is correct? Is it written in correct Associated Press stylebook format? Remember to cross-check your story against the AP Style Top 15 list that I created and posted on our course site. I do deduct points for not following those style rules. On a side note, it's really important to spell sources' names correctly, but that's something that's also easy to mess up. But the thing is, I see students make this mistake a lot. They'll write someone's name in a story and it will be written 2 different ways. So I know at least one of the spellings is incorrect. And the thing is, a person's name is kind of like, those are the most important words to them. So you want to make sure they're correct. If the person took the time to give you an interview, then you want to at least make sure you reward them by spelling their name correctly. Secondly, if you misspell people's names, that's a really sloppy mistake, and it kind of makes me concerned about what other mistakes might be in your story that I'm not aware of. Perhaps you misquoted people, perhaps you got certain facts wrong. So if you can't even get basic things like the spelling of a source's name correct, that really, I think, hurts your credibility as a journalist. So you really, as a journalist, need to sort of sweat the minor details because they're important. The devil's in the details, as the expression goes. Step number 4, circle all dates and numbers, and then double check to make sure that you provided the correct date. Use proper names of days such as Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, etc., instead of yesterday, today, or tomorrow. And that's because you don't know when the story will run, so using the latter terms could cause confusion. Make sure your numbers are correct also. Remember, it's okay to round off large numbers. If you arrived at a number through math, for example, if you write something like the college's budget will increase 22% this upcoming fiscal year, double check that to make sure you calculate it correctly. Step number 5, re-examine every quote. Compare it to your notes. Is it punctuated correctly? Is it attributed to the correct person? Is it typed in your story correctly? Did you accidentally omit not or an un or some other words that could entirely change its meaning? Remember that I posted a link on our course site for the rule for quotes if you forget how to properly write a quote. Finally, step number 6, have someone else review your story. It can be difficult for us to be objective about our own writing, so show your story to someone you know who is a good writer and will give you honest feedback. Ask them to review it to see if it makes sense to them or if there are any issues. Adelphi students can get free feedback from the Writing Center, and you can even submit your story to them online so you don't have to visit the office. Just keep in mind that it may take them a few days to respond, so plan accordingly so that you meet the deadline for submitting your story in our class.